Welcome to Classy Broadcast with Classy Broad members Jay Crook, Callie Fawkes, and Sycamore Treasy. Join us today as we discuss my upcoming album, What You Leave Behind, releasing on all major streaming platforms on September 27th. We will also discuss Suicide Awareness Month and suicide and mental health in general. Thanks for joining us for the very first episode of Classy Broadcast. Your support means the world to us.
All right, what's up, y'all? This is kind of like the soft launch into a podcast that we are starting in correlation with a rap group that we're also starting. So the three of us, myself, Sycamore Treasy, we got Callie Fawkes and Jay Crook, and the three of us as a team make the super group, Classy Broad.
We're pretty all right.
And then Jesse, one day we were talking about podcasting, and he was like, dude, the Classy Broadcast. And we were like, okay, that's pretty dope.
Dude, I literally freaked out.
No,
that's fucking perfect.
Yeah, I audibly, when I got it, I was like, oh. Okay, so.
It's hard. It's hard being a pimp.
Yeah, so with that being said, all three of us independently have projects that we're currently working on. But on the front line of that is Callie's new album drops very soon. I don't know, but
27th?
Yeah, so September 27th. So that's for us in the current timeline. That's like a week away. Something like that.
Let's see, it's the 18th, so,
a little over
9 days.
Yeah, so 9 days away. But whenever you're listening to this, it might be out already. So more than likely, who knows?
Depending on how long it takes us.
Yeah, so that being said, Callie, a very deep conceptual album. She let Crook and I preview it early, and we're going to just kind of dissect it and talk about it, because as artists, we want people to be able to listen to our stuff and obviously dissect it how they want, but also there's times we sit down and we're like, man, if somebody only knew what I meant when I said this and did that. Mm-hmm. So kind of an opportunity to do those things.
Why don't we start off by you telling us what it's called?
It's called What You Leave Behind. I was really adamant about releasing it this month because it's September right now. It is Suicide Awareness Month. My mother died by suicide in March 15th, 2024. And it's been absolutely fucking gut-wrenching, terrible experience. But I think a lot of people just kind of look at it as oh, it's just grief. Oh, I know how you feel. My grandpa died of cancer. You know what I mean? Dude, not to discredit that. That fucking hurts. But it's completely different. And there's so many people too that are just oh, you just got to get past it. And so I just really wanted to get in depth into what it felt like and what my experience was.
Yeah, I think I think you bring up a good point, because obviously I don't think there's any other experience like it other than it itself. You can't I don't think it's comparable to anything. Something I personally, fortunately, don't have that experience of. But like you said, it's such a difficult, only as I can imagine, but extremely difficult, but also the layers to how it happened. And that's what, again, is so dope about your album. I'm excited to talk about it, because it's not, it's just so layered into the thought process, and where your and your mother's relationship was, throughout your whole life. It's crazy. So, so I don't know how you want to start it off, but I mean, we can just kind of dive into it.
I kind of want to ask Crook if he has anything to say before we get too started.
I just wanted to put this out because it's super, super important that we keep talking about suicide. Mm-hmm. We can't just, after September, put this on the back burner and pretend everything's fine again. Yeah. We have to keep talking about it, because if we stop, then more people are going to die.
Yes.
And that's just the truth. And with Wyoming having an exponentially higher suicide rate than we're the number one in the country.
We are.
And
are we now?
Number 3 in the world, I'm pretty sure.
Well, number 3, so there's only 2 countries that are high, that have higher suicide rates than us.
In the U.S.
Yeah, and only 2 states that are even close to comparable, and like we can get more in depth into those later
and
too, because I
even
have that.
that being said, like it just goes to show that there's obviously a significant problem, and there's I mean, where there's a problem, there's got to be some form of a solution, whatever that may be. So, like you said, having dialogue beyond this month, which is obviously, again, we stated Suicide Awareness Month, the dialogue has to continue now and forever.
Yes.
So,
yeah, and I honestly have so much to say about like what we can do, starting with survivors of the suicide of a loved one are 400% more likely to die by suicide as well. And with this very dismissive or very like, ooh, like that's uncomfortable attitude, so many people kind of back away from that. And like, and also like I've noticed in like talking to other people who are survivors of a suicide of a loved one, they tend to focus on like, well, like my pain is whatever, they must have been in so much pain to die by suicide. And yes, absolutely, but your pain is what we can control right now, what we can do anything about. And you know, the support of people who lose people by suicide is suicide prevention. And that's like one thing that I really want to be absolutely clear about.
yeah. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's very eloquently put. So, I guess from there, we'll just kind of lead into how would you like to start it off to dive into it?
I guess at first, like, so the point behind this album was, like I said, to immerse people as much as I possibly could in my experience. Because even as a person who has survived the suicide of a loved one, all of our experiences, like Treasy said, are so nuanced because we all had different relationships with those people. So even survivors of suicide don't know what it's like. And there's so much, it's so layered, like he said, and I could never say it all. And it never stops being a new experience. And it's never quiet. And I had said something about like releasing this album was like hard and scary because I was like, what if I miss things? And the fact is that I did. Not only did I miss things that I haven't thought about, but as soon as I sent it off and like realized that it was like ready to go, I realized like I left something out. Like it's so easy to miss signs because we can misinterpret them. Like so my mother and I were in a fight last, May of 2023. And she knew that I had lost a lot of friends to suicide, and she knew how much that hurt me, and she threatened suicide. And that was when I cut her off because I thought she was just doing it to hurt me. And I was incredibly upset at that kind of emotional manipulation. And I had no idea that that was really how she felt. And you know, I also want to be very clear about the fact that like she had mentioned multiple times in her journals, her letters to people, her texts, that she would do it if she wasn't so afraid. And so like if people say like, oh, I'm just too afraid, like, oh, I just don't know how I would do that, don't take those as signs that they won't do it. Like it's
because
so
they
very
absolutely will.
Yeah.
Anything that a human is afraid of, they can definitely push past with, you know, a little help.
Well, and probably too, the deeper you go and the heavier it gets, the more like the almost maybe the less scared you get. Like it stops being so scary and like
absolutely.
So yeah.
So actually, in the book Why People Die by Suicide, I did a lot of research about suicide after this because, you know, when you lose somebody to suicide, suddenly, like, you want to know why. And I will never know absolutely why, but I can kind of get some clues. And he talks about the fact that there is a human imperative to stay alive. So even if you want to commit suicide, even if you want to die by suicide, we're trying to change the language so it's not so shameful. You have to dissociate from the fear of that. And in my mother's case, she did that through using drugs, through thinking about it on a regular basis, which I didn't know about until after she had died. But I had talked to her, one of her friends, and she says, oh yeah, even 20 years ago she talked about it all the time, and I had no idea. But the combination of that and like getting into Rex and like just, she desensitized her fear of death. And that's, it takes a lot, but it can happen. So, in service of immersing people into my experience, I kind of want to ask Truzy and Jesse, Jay Crook, what they experienced, how they felt as they listened to the album and what stood out to them.
So,
Definitely.
You want to go first?
Definitely. Oh, I can
go first. Okay.
It definitely takes you through the journey of a survivor. It starts out with I forgot. It starts out with a couple poems, right? Mm-hmm. And those poems kind of really get you into the feel of it. And I'm gonna tell you right now, like, be prepared, to be inside of that emotion when you listen to this album, because it definitely doesn't hold back. It doesn't shield you from the truth. It comes with a whirlwind of thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and I feel like it's important that those come across like so smoothly like that. And like, I for lack of better words, I use the word smooth because like this isn't a smooth thing, you know what I'm saying?
But you made something very rough.
But
like on purpose. You made something and you made it uncomfortable on purpose.
It should
like
be.
The intention. The intention was to be uncomfortable.
But in my honest opinion, you did a very good job in encapsulating those thoughts, feelings, and emotions, especially even with how there's a few points in the album where like some of the content is so jarring, audibly and like and emotionally, that like because how do I say, like, one moment you're here emotionally and in your thoughts, and then all of a sudden you're clear the hell out to sea, like thinking and lost in the sauce, really. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And like, I think that album does a really good job of like pulling you and showing you things that we're not specifically ready to feel or hear,
like the hard truths, like the shit that's like, it's like some things that maybe it's good to have the knowledge on, but it's one of those things where like to acquire the knowledge you have to put yourself in a pretty uncomfortable mental headspace.
Yeah, you can't unknow it.
Yeah.
I think this is good too because Classy Broad, we talk about the hard stuff. Maybe not so much in a way that is difficult to hear, but we definitely do talk about hard things.
I mean, our soft launch to the podcast is this.
Yeah. Also, like, do keep in mind, like, in the future will probably be funny and
no, not probably. It will. We are silly as hell. Like in the future, it will be. But I think this is like obviously
got to deal with the trauma.
This is this one on that, but this is kind of just the perfect opportunity because there's a lot to dissect, and I think. I mean, personally,
I think there's a lot of important things to be said too that I don't think a lot of people think about.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I do have one thing to ask you while you're talking about it. Actually, two, but when you had heard like bits and pieces of the album when we were on the way to Shing, there was a line that I was kind of sitting there, and of course I was like. Kind of gauging your reaction and seeing like, because you were there next to me and I wanted to kind of see like whether you felt like it was an accurate portrayal. And you just kind of like jarredly like looked over at me at one point with like a moment of panic almost. And I'm curious like what was going through your mind or what you felt, or if you remember that.
I don't remember, but you know, that's a part of it. Yeah, I don't really remember. I do remember that it would have the premise of, like, to me at the moment, it sounded like you were idolizing it. Suicidal ideation. Is that what the word I'm looking for?
Yeah. So.
It felt like to me that you were glorifying that feeling, but it definitely wasn't. It was just showing how these things make you feel, because, you know, like, and it scared me, you know, being a person who cares a lot about you and stuff, you know, I was like, is this bitch gonna fucking, you know, do the thing? And, you know, like, I felt, like, I felt like, wow, holy shit, like, we've done so much work in this area that, like, this, you know, like, it surprised me because we had moved so far from that feeling, you know what I'm saying? But then also...
One thing I'll piggyback off that is you're right, because we can talk more about our related experience with some stuff, but I will say it was really unfortunate to see over the years both of us earn some real growth in our mental health, like some positive, creating some positive spaces, and then this obviously really fucking spiraled you, like like that was like Crook. I think that's kind of where you're at. It's like saying like, man, we at a point where we're like, hey, like we all, like we'd have these conversations like, oh, we all doing pretty good, man, and then like obviously this.
See, and that's another thing that honestly, like, I kind of left out too, was another feeling is that, like, after it happened, like, I'm not gonna lie, I was really upset with her at some point, because I had just started to, like, kind of get, like, some more mental health, and, like, unfortunate though it may be, like, setting some boundaries with her and her not accepting those boundaries and having to, like, kind of move away from being around her had actually given me, like, a lot of room to, like, not be such a people pleaser and, like, work on my mental health. And I was doing really good, and then this happened, and it's crazy how fast that it can just, like, ruin everything. Let's see. I want to be very clear about the fact that it was not a dramatization. Every letter, every journal entry, every emotion, every voicemail those are real things.
Yeah. In before you dive into that, like, when I go to me, I'd like to, like, talk about some of that stuff.
Absolutely.
So, well, I mean, do you feel like you've kind of conveyed how you feel about it?
Yeah.
Before I dive in? Okay, so for me, Callie gave me the album on a zip drive early to check out, and so I have actually quite a bit to say about it. So starting off, Crook had mentioned that it starts with poems. So I think I forget how many tracks, but the first, I think, for sure, at least the first two tracks, there's no beat, there's no instrumental. It's just a cappella poems, you know, just you're just reciting poetry, and it's very somber, like right out the gate, but not in a negative way. It's not somber, like it's somber, but it grips you, like you're
it feels cathartic.
Yeah, it's almost cathartic because you're listening, and the way that you're telling the poems, like the way that you're speaking, it still catches your ear, and it's very soothing at the same time. So that got me right away, and then the next song after the poems is Can We Talk? And a little bit of history there for us is, I don't know how much of me inspired that song, but there was a layer to it. So, I mean, I guess you can, like, do you think, like, I was kind of our relationship at the time was the primary inspiration for that song, or was like...
I would say that, like, it definitely described a feeling that I got from a lot of people, but you were the person that, like, I cared enough about that it, like... You know, it hurt me in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So as a friend, as a fan, is like literally like a soul bonded family member to you. Obviously, so I heard that song prior. That was the only thing I'd heard from the album prior, because you sent it to me and was like, "Yo, like, kudos to you in good faith, being like, hey, before I put this on an album, like you should hear it. And it's one of those things. It's when you guys listen, it's it's a tough listen because we've all been that friend to somebody, and then it's an even tougher listen. We're like, oh fuck, this song is inspired by the emotion that I had, drawn, like that was drawn from you based off what was going on. So in there, I don't like, even here, I don't have to go into super deep detail because I want, like, if you haven't heard it before and this podcast makes you want to listen, I want you to go listen to that and you'll get what I'm saying. But Can We Talk is it was super profound to listen to, and then again having for me the layer of being like, oh shit, like this song is heavily influenced by our relationship. So I listened to that, and that obviously set the tone. But then as you go, so just start to finish, I'll put it in like the context of, I didn't feel like I was listening to an album. I felt like I was watching a play, and I mean that dead ass sincerely. It wasn't like an album, it was like a play. And I actually ended up like very cathartic and almost like like just glutton for punishment, in the sense of it was very sharp, and it's a very painful listen in the context of, again, the subject matter. But it reminded me almost of this abstract, because it's so cerebral that it reminded me a good thing I kept thinking of, like if anybody's familiar with like the game Silent Hill, because it's so that's what I kept getting, like Silent Hill. Yeah, it started giving me like Silent Hill vibes, like with listening to it, because it's like you're the main character of this play, this album, and like we're in your like I mean, for people who haven't heard it, like the skits on it. I remember when you were like talking about the skits, I didn't even know what to expect, and when I heard the skits, I was like, God, man, like the skits had me shook. I was like, fuck.
Right?
No, yeah, like had me shook, and like, yeah,
I'm
I mean,
so glad that
and
was my goal with this.
the skits, and I like, so fucking cool how you pulled it off, and then so the skits beautifully just like would flow into the next concept, the next song. And again, like you could put 10,000 people in a room who'd all lost a parent to suicide, and they all have different stories.
Yes,
they have different
absolutely.
relationships, different emotions that get conveyed. Like
that's an important thing. That's an important statement too, because like everyone, we as humans, we all want to like relate with people and stuff, but this is an unrelatable situation.
Like you can relate, you can relate with some key parts of it potentially, but like again, in the album, you break down shit about. So you brought up earlier, but and again, if you're listening to this right now and you haven't heard the album, I would even suggest pausing right here and listen to the album, and then going back and listen to this, because I want to be able to break it down more. But even throughout the album, you read excerpts from like Facebook posts of like her friends and shit that were fucking disgusting. Like whoever that human being was, like that is a vile, foul thing to say, and you fucking suck, dog. Like I don't give a fuck if you ever hear this. I don't know who you are, but that is a disgusting, vile thing. And that is a live and direct Facebook post that somebody said to you after your mother passed away from.
Well, and the sad thing is that was one person for me. Like I won't name any names, but there is one person who like really went through a super hard time with the suicide of a loved one, and they said some terrible things to her, and it was so many people. And just quickly, just on the subject of like us all having different experiences, while she didn't lose a parent, I reached out to her first because after she lost her person, her pain was very palpable. And so I couldn't even eat. I had to do like liquid foods. Shout out to Drea Smith. She's the only one who actually followed through and when she asked what she could do. But this person, her primary like thing that she experienced was anger. And that wasn't it was there, but it wasn't it was for her. And everyone experiences it differently.
So I definitely think that was one thing that I thought was like just beautifully articulated, is throughout the album you would have the songs where the songs themselves obviously are so effective at conveying a message, but then the song would be followed by an interlude or a skit or a poem or a real life excerpt from somebody saying something, or a voicemail, a real fucking voicemail. Like, this is not acted, this is not staged. This is, again, this is like, my bad. But again, this is such a cerebral album. And so that, and then so going through and listening to all that and having it all come together again, I kept relating it to a play, because for anybody who is looking for like the generalized album experience, this is not that.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, I would like to name another album right now that starts off the first 2 tracks are literally no music, the first 2 tracks are no music, and just the way it like flows into the next thing. And kind of where I'll conclude with where I'm going with it is, one, I will shout out my favorite song on there is the radio.
Regret Radio.
Yeah, Regret Radio. That song is fucking. And I'm your friend, and I am like, I'm your friend, I'm your fan. But before all that, like, I'm literally like, again, we are like bonded. Like, the 3 of us, our souls are fucking intertwined. Like, we've been in it. Yeah, we've been in it. So with that being said, that song, not even exaggerating, like, this is gonna be easy to say this because like, oh, it's your friend, your fan. Like, if I didn't know who you were and I heard that, it would be in like top songs I've ever heard. Like, because I mean, I listened to that and for a multitude of reasons, but even the way you engineered it, I was sitting there asking how. Like, the way you were, I was like, how did you fucking? Yeah, no, like I just
with the cuts and stuff.
Yes, bro. Like, I was shook. I was like, so it's ironic because here I was feeling all these feelings, super emotional, again, somber. When I listen to it, it's what I consider headphone music. Mm-hmm. So I had my headphones on. Headphone music. I was down here where we're recording the pod, but it's also where my studio's at. So I was down on the studio, headphones on, and like my good ass headphones, my studio headphones. And I was just absorbed. And like, so I was feeling all those emotions, but then I was kind of jealous, like, fuck, how'd you fucking do that? Fucking dope ass guy. But that song itself, the way it like switches, I mean, it's, if you haven't listened, go fucking listen. Come back. But the way it switches, like radio stations through the different songs, the different beats, any of the times that you had a rap about your mother or your experience with her, and the way you fucking melded that together, I truly, I don't think, I know certainly I couldn't have pulled that off.
Oh,
like,
thank you.
Like, as somebody who's like very proud of my craft, and I feel like I'm a pretty slick engineer and I'm a pretty like introspective guy. It was when I finished that song in particular, I'm like, now that's fucking art. Like, that is fucking artwork. Like,
I remember when I finished that, I actually texted Jesse and I said, this is such a masterpiece that I think people might actually side with my regret.
It's fucking, it's phenomenal. So that, and then so after finishing everything and listening to it, the last thing I'll point out, and this is for anybody, because obviously, I'm surprised we haven't just said this already, but obviously trigger warning. Because if you're suicidal and you're heavily depressed, this is you need to go into it with the mindset of you are going to, like, it's a very dark cerebral album, and it is not a happy ending. Like, it doesn't have a thing where it doesn't start off like with like the sorrow and like have this transition into like, here's where I found my growth. It's a very cerebral album, and we're not saying that at some point some music framed in that direction couldn't happen, but this album is not that, so it's meant to be
it's funny like that you started talking about Regret Radio, because in my head like 5 minutes ago I was like, now let's talk about Regret Radio. Like, I was gonna say it, but I so fun.
And the thing is, when you have so many dope songs on the album, and then you just like that one in particular, just fucking, I listened to it, I play, I like it. It stopped me on my listen through the album. I'm so glad,
because I was actually worried that people would be like, 9 minutes. Like,
and what a flashback, what a callback.
Well, no, literally, because I mean, the fact that you still had so much of that, in, like, oh man, what a fucking cool song. So
while we're talking about it, though, I do want to talk about my favorite song on the album now, which is "Spit It Up." Mm-hmm. If you saw us perform, at the Futuristic show, Futuristic and Say So show.
Yeah, shout out Say So, man.
Yeah. She performed that live, and that song is fucking poetry.
It is. It really is.
It is fucking poetry. Like, me personally, like, I like being in the darker side of shit. Like, I like to be in the shadow. I like to sit there and analyze and do that work, man. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, without that, we can't see the light.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because, like, Jesse, like, he was there next to me through all of this. Like, so, like there's a point in the song where I talk about, like, what was happening in my dreams, and, like, I'm sure he remembers me describing that to him and being like, dude, like, my brain has changed.
Yeah, no,
but in my head I was like, what a fucking crazy cool experience.
You know, it is. It's almost like I compare it to that, like, morbid curiosity of where you'll have, like, the cutesy little housewife and, like, all she listens to is, like, murder podcasts. is that shit. It's just there's some level of also human fascination with it, and to be able to dive into the psyche and the process of other people thinking, I don't think has to be looked at in a negative scope. There can be some actual, like, really big benefits to getting to, like, look through someone's personal experience, regardless of how you can, obviously it can be a lived experience, but kind of vicariously get to experience it through their art, their story, whatever it is. And then you can take pieces of that and come back to you building your mental health up, and, like, there's some positives. So, like, that's another thing is I did mention it doesn't have a happy ending, but that doesn't mean that you have to. I don't think a listener should walk away just utterly destroyed. In the context of if they do, that's not your, you know, I know that's not your intention. You want to convey that level, but I think that it's again, we talk about Suicide Awareness Month, is somebody might listen to that album and hit up their friend that's struggling and be like, God damn, like, holy shit, like, holy shit, no,
that's
literally,
might
hit up their friend. I'm like, damn, like,
well, and, like, to start paying attention to the survivors, because like, yes, dude, like, the people who we lose to suicide, they were so sad, but, like, the survivors need us, like, the parent, like, years later, the parents of children who were lost to suicide they're not the same. It changes you as a person. And on the note, no, it doesn't. Yeah. And on the note of what he was saying is, like, I made a post a while back because people would be like, oh, if you want some solace, no, I don't. I don't want this to be pretended that it's okay. I don't want to say it will lead to a happy ending. But what I was saying before is, like, just because this is awful and it will never not be awful doesn't mean there's not other good things that happen in my life. Just because those good things happen in my life does not mean that awful thing led to those things. And I want to very much separate those things, because so many people, actually, shout out to my therapist, Monica, with Wandering Minds. I can't remember her last name. But she gave me that book. It's Okay That You're Not Okay. Because our grief culture is get past it. You'll get, no. And the thing is they say, like, your grief stays the same size. It's just that your life grows around it. And, like, it never stops hurting. It's just that your life becomes bigger than that grief.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really relatable to give some context between Cal and I's mutual kind of experience is just oddly enough, right around the same time, we both dove, like, really deep into some severe depression, like totally unrelated scenarios, some things in life that triggered it that were similar. And then we both dove into this, like, and again, for a guy who, like, went his whole life, who I would never have considered, like, a depressed or sad person.
I would call it existential terror.
Yeah, so yes, that's exactly that's what I was trying to say. When I say depression, like, I'm trying to emphasize, like, this wasn't just, like, even how you maybe might, when you hear depression, like, oh, sad, and there's no, like, nah, dog, like, I was horrified, like, and like you said, existential, nothing made sense to me no more. Like, everything, it was all bad. And
how are we gonna talk about the weather when we're all gonna die
yeah,
someday?
yeah, and like we were talking about the little
and
shit.
Why are clouds
like
like
no,
that?
literally, the
Like,
clouds,
yeah.
like literally, that was the same thing that I was
Yeah.
like I would go outside and I'm like, what the fuck is up with clouds? Like, have they? And I remember asking my wife, like, do they always look like this? And she's like, what do you mean? Yeah, clouds have always looked like clouds. Like,
I
was
remember
just,
like really big open spaces used to scare the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Like just like
And just
it makes
so-
me feel so small.
So again,
like,
so even like to anybody from an outside perspective might hear us just kind of bantering about it and be like, what is it? And like, yo, if you don't get it, you don't get it. Like, but it's just the existential side of it. And like when I feel like you had a lot of growth, where I've personally found some growth is like you said, is for the longest time I wanted so the experience that really fucked me up, it changed me forever, for fucking ever. It did.
Yeah,
it changed
absolutely.
me. It changed me forever. And with that, anytime I was trying to heal, my thought process was I just wanted it to go away.
Yeah.
And that was the thing where when I started going to
Yeah.
therapy and
Yeah,
reading, it
that's
was like stop wanting it to go away
Yeah,
because
it
it won't.
doesn't.
It's not going to go away. It was you transform.
let it have space, hold
Yeah,
space
exactly.
for it.
Yeah, you hold
Yeah.
space for it. Respond to it differently. Like like it's going to exist. So change your response and
let it speak its piece, but don't let it control your
yeah,
life.
yeah. So that's another kind of thing to add in, and that's again, if we start really diving into the mental health side of it, like we could sit here and talk for fucking hours. And trust and believe, guys, there's times that we wish we had the camera up and running because we'll hang out for like 5-6 hours and we'll just be like, man, we should have
One of the
recorded.
reasons why
We
we
should
decided to
have.
do
We should have
podcasts.
recorded that
Yeah.
shit. Yeah, because we'll have these deep conversations. But yeah, so. But yeah, so that on that end, that I just want to say, I'll conclude with my perspective of it, and I'm gonna give you your flowers. What a fucking beautiful album! It was beautiful, so much so I was like legitimately shook. Like that night, I'm sure you recall. Like, but even as I was listening, I was texting you and being like, "Oh my fucking god!" And like each song, and then I was like, "Oh my!" Yeah.
I know every time he texted, I thought he was done with it, and then he was like,
No, but yeah. So I'm just gonna give you flowers there because
"Thank you."
not what I expected. Not a traditional album format, but fuck, did you create literal fucking artwork? Like
I was gonna say,
it's
like,
art.
I would describe it the same way that I described, like, I don't know if it was the last or the last Childish Gambino album, and I said, I don't go into it expecting music. It's art. It's not music. It's art. You know.
Yeah. And so this is
Art's
very
not
much
supposed to be pretty. It's supposed to make you feel something.
Yes. Comfort the disturbed, disturb the comfortable.
Isn't that like Abraham Lincoln who says that?
don't
I'm just
know.
kidding.
I'm
I'm
actually
just kidding.
curious who says that, but-
Definitely not Abraham.
Somebody
Lincoln.
said we'll give them their flowers too.
So, question for you, listening to it, like, how accurate do you think that it was in the like portrayal of the experience, and how much of it was like a surprise to you? Because, like, you know, I go into like, you know, people don't always speak everything out loud that's in their heads, and also, you know, do you have anything to say about the experience of kind of being there for someone who's been...
So, with me being next to you the whole entire time through this whole thing, I'm not gonna lie, there wasn't a whole lot of surprises to me on there.
I'm pretty
but
open with him.
Also, I went into it with what, March? What month is it? So I went into it with 6 months of learning and experience. Like, I mean, 6 months doesn't sound like a whole lot in a learning fashion.
But when you're with your significant other,
And going through something
in,
big like this, a lot happens very quickly.
And like, I had to learn how to be the person of a survivor. Like, because like, yes, I'm a survivor too, but like, obviously, like, it wasn't my mother, you know. And so
He also experiences death really differently. Like, he's pretty accepting of it, and I wish.
Yeah, well, you know, like, you go through the death thing enough, and it's just a fact of life now to me. But like, suicide isn't just like a fact of life to me. Like the suicide always hits a little different, and it kind of puts me into this liminal space where I don't really know how to think or feel or react or anything. And that it's important to, like, as the like person who is with the survivor or like next to them the whole time, like, you've got to just hold space for them. You've got to be open and understanding, and you have to know that like this isn't going to, they're never going to go back to the person that they were before. Like, you know, like when you talk about like you blow up a balloon, right? And then like let all the air out of it, you do that, like, you know, and the balloon, yeah, it goes back to roughly the same size or whatever, but it's still like, you can very obviously tell that it's been blown up a million times. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, especially
like,
you said if it's been used multiple times, it's going to be.
You can tell that the balloon's like there,
distressed.
But like,
it's
right.
like distressed.
So like, and
its
then
shape
you know,
is not as perfect.
And sometimes the balloon fucking pops. You know what I'm saying? And really, like that's a fucking great analogy for like the mind doesn't go back.
You just make that shit up.
Yeah.
Damn, dude, good job.
But like
the
shit doesn't go back, dude, you know, and like so I went into it with the understanding that like this is the change.
Mm-hmm.
This is the journal entry of the broken, you know, and I'm not saying you're fucking broken, like, you know, but
we are.
You know, I was gonna say you can be like pieced back together, but you're still broken.
Yeah,
you're not like fixed. You're just
you know, different. And this is it's like you took your experience and put it under the microscope, and then like the listening process is you like opening your fucking eyes to it, you know, and it's like. It's important to be awake to this because, like, being asleep just fucking feels better. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and I also think, I mean, we've said enough about the album that at this point, if you guys have listened and made it this far but haven't listened, like,
do it.
You fucking, you know, you don't fucked up. You should have done that. Do it. Because we can dive into what I liked about the grocery skits is I didn't know how you were going to like portray those because I knew because you reached out to some friends and
I was very specific. I didn't even tell the people who recorded what they would be.
I
didn't know that was a surprise for me.
Because like it's not the main focus.
So I didn't know what to expect. Like knowing that you were doing these grocery store skits, and so again, if you haven't heard it and you're here, go listen. But just to give people context, is you would be at work scanning stuff, whatever, and a person would come up and like, hey, how you been? And in the background, your guys' conversation will continue. So you hear you and this person like responding back and forth, but it becomes very, very like muffled and distorted, and it gets overtaken by your inner monologue, and it is absolutely fucking tragic. Like it is like fucking absolutely tragic. And like that's again that kind of insight of like I know that was a dramatization, but that's real. Like that's really what happens. You're somewhere getting through the day, and then out of nowhere, that just fucking, you know.
Well, it's that like kind of like I'm hoping people will get this from it. I don't know, like, you know, people are different, but like you never know what's going through somebody's head. You never know what they're going through when you're like talking about your little problems and like being mean to them when you don't know them. You don't know what they're going through, you know, like, and yeah, I mean, I won't get too deep into it, like, but yeah, that's, you know, you never know what somebody's going through, and, you know, treat people kindly because most of us are fucking struggling. Life is hard.
Yeah, I want to put it out there too that I only listened to the album front to back today. Like, she's kept this shit so under fucking wraps from everyone and me being around her like every single day. Like even I didn't know, I didn't hear not even one finished song until
let alone a finished project. We
were on our way to Shangri-La Fest in Minnesota, and like I heard a couple of the songs, you know, while I was driving, but boy was I tired. And so, like, I just listened to that this morning, front to back, like, and so, and even then, like, the flash drive that she gave, like, it still I still haven't heard the album flow.
Yeah.
I still haven't heard it because I had to go and intentionally click on every song. And
I thought you would make a playlist.
I made a playlist.
Really? Yeah. See, I didn't.
I made a playlist.
I'm illiterate, dude, so I did not. do that. I like clicked into every song with intent.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
I just want to say really quickly, because I forgot when I was talking about how supporting survivors is suicide prevention. The absolute proof of that is that the last 2 people who I've lost to suicide were in pain due to the loss of a suicide to them. One of them, it was his mother. My mother, these were in her bed. When I went to clean her house, these were in her bed. These are 2 people that she lost to suicide. Tell me that didn't influence her decision.
Yeah, it's hard.
And you know what? She never talked about it. And I'm guaranteeing you it's because people got tired of hearing it.
We need to show support to our survivors.
And then,
That's my uncle, by the way. I don't remember him.
One thing I'll add that is a very important dynamic to this conversation is for the people who are trying to support the severely depressed and suicidal. I do think that everybody needs to hold some a fair, like have a fair space to like frame that in, because I think like most people who don't have a relatable experience and don't suffer from severe like mental health. I mean, for fuck's sake, if you live on planet Earth, you have some level of mental health issue. But the people who suffer more severely with like severe anxiety, depression, that umbrella, the loved ones who don't understand that sometimes. Like I'm guilty of this. I know you've been guilty of this, Cal. But when they're trying to help, it actually kind of will frustrate you because, and I think we have to like check in and take accountability for that because, like one of the biggest things that would drive me nuts is, and again, this is such a relatable thing for everybody, but like when people would hit you with like that. Like, oh, you have really bad anxiety. Well, just try not worrying about it.
Yeah.
And I mean that that level of like,
let me just override the anxious part of my brain.
Yeah, like or like you said, like the very kind of like insincere, almost like the hey, like it'll get better.
Yeah,
like, it'll get better. Being like
not necessarily.
Yeah,
I think that like it'll get better is a definite like statement to avoid.
Yes, absolutely. It's
I think I'll put it this way: the best response I think is like if I were to sit with somebody that I really care about, no matter who it is, how long I've known them, if and this is something I've also is a new kind of like perspective I hold because of like our relationship and like the song "Can We Talk" and all that. But I'd put it as simple as if I was sitting with somebody and I knew, like I could feel their heaviness. They'd obviously shown the signs of that and like the maybe possible like suicidal ideations, those fun words. But like literally just like be like, I'm here, like just that. It's I'm here.
Absolutely.
I'm
Hold
here.
Space for
like
I
don't know what to say to you right now. I know that what I say won't help. I know there's probably nothing I can do in this moment to help, but I'm here.
Well, because in that spirit, when you try to make it better, like you make that person feel like they're a burden to you because of their feelings. You make that person feel like they are less than worthy as long as they're sad, and so they need to get better so that you can want to be around them. And while we're on the subject of harmful mindsets, I know this is going to be a hot take, but trauma dumping, fuck that term. Fuck it. Because I understand the concept behind it. I do. But I think that it is a very hurtful mindset because it creates this culture of, I can't go to people with my pain. My pain is a burden. And that is one of the most common things that is a mindset of suicidal people is, well, my pain is a burden to people. And so I'll just get rid of myself and then they won't have to worry about it. And that just passes the pain down. So if you're worried about sitting and listening to someone's pain, just wait until you have to hold it forever.
Oh, yeah, and I think I do agree, probably a hot take. And I think with anything, there's obviously levels to it because, again, this is a topic that has such a spiderweb effect of like pathways that you could go down, is because unfortunately there are some people who are severe sufferers of anxiety, depression, and a multitude of different like mental health ailments. But there's also some people who do suffer, but will also use that as a bargaining tool in relationships. And I think that that's kind of like...
So I would like to speak on that as well.
Yeah.
So I just recently went to what do you call it?
Suicide prevention meeting?
Yeah, it was a workshop.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so and they taught what they call the QPR method. And it's question, persuade, and refer. And one of the things that they stressed was so many people are like, well, what if they just want attention? What if they just want attention? And first of all, they said, most of the time, that's not the case. Most of the time, those people are truly suffering. And worse come to worse, you gave someone who wanted attention. But at the gamble of, preventing someone's suicide, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, so I guess a question, like I guess we can kind of branch off into this kind of trajectory now. And Crook, you can get involved too at any point here.
I'm involved, man.
But
It's like I can't become uninvolved.
yeah. But well, I'm saying, I guess I want to put this. I mean, in this context, like this, my question is like directed to both of you. So, without having to go into detail, like both of you know, and I know we all have relatable experience about people in our lives who have added a level of heaviness. Like I mean, I'm trying to convey in a respectful, healthy manner, but like people who you have exhausted trying to help, and then the return effect of that is very draining for you. And so kind of my question to you guys is like, and maybe even at that workshop, if they talked about like, what is the cutoff? Like if there is somebody who truly in your life is a level of like unhealthy, because I don't even want to use the term toxic, because that's a disgusting format to put it in.
Yeah.
So we'll just say it is an unhealthy balance in your life. What do you think is the point that it's like, hey, I can no longer be part of this relationship, like, and without holding like guilt of like, oh, if something happens to them, oh my God. I mean, this is very relatable for.
So that's a great question. I definitely have my own mindset. I kind of want to see what Jesse's is first.
I think he was thinking about chipmunks and shit.
Brought him back to reality. I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty confused.
So I guess my question is saying, like, for a relationship that you have with somebody who is, for a fact they have severe depression, like, they've had multiple, maybe even suicide attempts, but you have, like, we're talking for like a friend or a family member who you've tried for years and years to be there for, and in response, it's not you. Not only can you not offer the answer that they're seeking, but also in return, you're getting constantly like drained and exhausted from it. At what point is it acceptable to like sever a relationship without holding that as like
I see where you're at
like a rock of guilt in your chest?
Well, so yes, might be a hot take. So, but I'm a huge believer in understander of like the hurt people method, right? But also like we can't fill with an empty cup. You know what I'm saying? I believe that like we as people need to live in our peace, you know what I'm saying? And like I believe that like as people, like we should take care of ourselves first. Take care of yourself first, and the people that you care about their care will come after. You know what I'm saying? Because like if you constantly are giving and giving and giving and giving everything you have to a situation or to multiple situations, you have nothing left, not even to give to yourself.
And honestly, like to just piggyback off that, is that can also end up being negative for the person you're trying to help.
Right, because
like you're trying to draw from a source that is just completely depleted. And
I remember you were talking about David said that.
And so
feeding them the bits.
Yeah, and so like it's important to, in those situations, act with compassion and care and let those people know that you do love them, you know what I'm saying? But like also like when I don't have any spoons, I'm a fucking dick. Like, when I don't
If you're not familiar with spoon theory, look it up. It's not hard to understand.
If I don't have any, if I don't have anything to give, like I come off as cross and like kind of an asshole, you know what I'm saying? And that's just, and it's nothing directed towards anyone else or anything like that, but it's just that I am so empty when it comes to my emotional bandwidth that like I'm acting out of fight or flight and everything seems like a fight, you know what I'm saying? Because like I'm not gonna just run away, normally, but like also like when I don't have much or anything to give, like my brain doesn't function in that way either. And so I'm like, like I could potentially
have to be a fight when he's at that point.
Right. And I potentially, could just be like, fucking figure it out then.
Yeah. And I will say, relatable. Like,
and,
very relatable.
And I don't think that, obviously that's not helpful or healthy, but like, I do believe that we as people need to make sure that our cup is full before we go pouring our liquid in.
And even if it's not full, but you have something to draw from.
Right.
Like it's not like tapping into your reserves. Like that you're like, I have something to give of value. Like, and
also, the hurt people, but healed people heal people as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And growing people grow with people. That you can take that statement and put it however you want or need to form fit to your existence, but the reality of it,
we're reflections of the people we're surrounded by. For
it
sure.
feels good to feel good, and like when you grow, you grow. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, if you are not in a position to be able to help with compassion, then I don't think that you should be putting yourself into that position.
Well, because then it starts feeling phoned in,
right?
Like
and and people can, we're all vibe creatures. Like we can tell when people are being fake. The people
that I have that experience with, because obviously, like the reason I asked the question is because relatable experience. That's where they end up getting mad at me, is because at the point in the relationship where it doesn't only seem phoned in for me, but it absolutely is phoned in. I'm just saying this stuff to get the conversation over with. And obviously, like you said, that's not healthy. I'm not providing anything of value to this situation, so yeah. So I'm curious on your take on it.
So for me, in hindsight is 2020, and it's also a motherfucker. I believe that a lot of my issue with a lot of people, but mainly definitely my mother, was that I wanted to fix her. I wanted her to be better. I wanted to help her. And I think that if I could have shifted my focus to being there for her in her pain and not expecting results from it, it wouldn't have taken so much from me. And I would have been able to be there for her. And that's one of my greatest regrets, is not being able to accept her as an imperfect person with pain, who was, there was things that she chose not to do that she could have done. But I believe that every human does the best with what they have. And based on her trauma and her, predisposition to alcoholism. Like her mother died from alcoholism. I think that she did the best that she could with what she had. And she wasn't ready to be a mom. She made that very clear to me when I was younger, but I guilt tripped her into taking me in because I didn't understand. And I think that what we can do in those situations, and obviously it's every person's personal choice, but I think that what we can do in those situations is accept them as human and not have expectations,
Yeah, because I think this is such that's why this dialogue needs to expand beyond Suicide Awareness Month and just, always exist, because you could have a textbook as tall as the Empire State Building on this. Like I'm not even exaggerating.
That's something else I wanted to say too. Is that the conversation can never be long enough, and I think that's part of the problem too. Is that we try to fit it into these little things, and it can't.
Because the other layer to it is like some of the context we've put tonight's dialogue in has been very much of, hey, somebody who's suicidal and suffering, be there for them. Here's how you support them. Some ideas there, whatever. But then at the same time, what if the relationship is instead, hey, we're both suicidal, we're both miserable, and how do we help each other without because in the really tough times of my life with the people that I wanted to be there and support, when I would get frustrated, and this is me.
It's hard to be a lifeguard when you're drowning.
Yeah, so basically that's it. So I'll put it this way. When I had these people who, because of their distress, truly were being help me, help me, help me, help me. And on my bad days, I was like, motherfucker, help me. What do you, I'm and then
we're just kind of dragging each other down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's another layer of it, is being
that's a hard one.
Yeah, and exactly. It's one of those things where even now, we're not doing this podcast under the context that we have it figured out.
Oh, absolutely.
Not even at all. Yeah,
it's not a
it's not like,
problem.
oh, hey,
it's
one of those things where it's man, I can't. And then that's the thing is, again, we brought up your specific scenario. People who've lost a parent to suicide will even increase the number. Put 10 million of them in the same room, and they're going to all have different experiences. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the same with just in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to have people who, because that's the thing is, you might have somebody who's severely depressed and, potentially been suicidal, and you're like, what helped you? And they might go with I found God. And you're like, oh, okay. But then you go to a guy that you're like, hey, well, have you tried to find God? And they're like, motherfucker, no. You're barking up the wrong tree with that shit, or you might find the person who, that really fucking overtly positive attitude is what they needed. When they were down, they needed that person to be dude, it's gonna be okay. And they're like, yeah, because of my. And then somebody else is like, shut up, man. Quit being so positive, And then somebody who you go talk to them, they're like, oh, I needed somebody to be real with me.
Yes.
I was scared to death, and I needed the guy to look me in the face and we'll fucking get comfortable with it. And that's what helped me, So that guy. Yeah, exactly. So it's
something that made me think of is that the one big lifeline that we all have is 988. And for one, I found it on my mother's paperwork. Mm-hmm. She didn't use that resource. Mm-hmm. Either that or it just didn't work. Yes, yeah. It's a suicide prevention hotline. Okay. It's, they talk to you through things. Mm-hmm. And I'm guilty of being a suicidal person who's I'm not going to do that because they don't, in my mind, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're doing. From what I understand, it's not as much of a problem here because the police don't like to respond to suicide things here because they're afraid that it will actually either escalate the situation or it will become the suicide by cop thing.
It could potentially, those are potential things that could happen.
But the one thing that I want to stress that I was informed of during the QPR seminar is that Wyoming has its own dedicated call center. That's how much of a serious problem it is here. And they're constantly educating themselves and becoming better. Yes, and I'm going to be on the prevention coalition. They focus on what can we do in the schools? what can we do at the judge level? What you know what I mean? What can we do at other levels?
You just brought up such a good point. Is because, like you said, this needs these concepts and these ways to heal and process this information needs to start in the schools.
Yes.
And we're talking like
Start
because
young.
especially here in like the West, like in the Western world, that's not something like you go to other places in the country and like literally meditation and like self like mental health is part of their curriculum. Like it is literally part of their curriculum and what they do. And then over here it's very
They get
not even stuff her down. It's very just not even paid attention to. It's like it's not even, I'm not even telling you to stuff down. I'm just gonna let's not even talk about
something on that.
Yeah, let's not even talk about it. You know, so that's where again you and I have that. Another similar experiences. I'm also on coalitions, multiple, like, because for those that don't know watching is, so my line of work is very mentally draining, very blessed what I do. But for me, like Crook said, I don't have, there's a lot of times I come home without any spoons, like a lot, because I have like my cup, if it's full at all when I wake up in the morning, it usually gets dispersed throughout the day with the people that I, have the privilege and like the honor of working with, but it is heavy.
Oh, and that I used to do it. It's very both.
Yeah,
like,
both of you
get fulfilled and you also get
drained. Exactly. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, there's days where I'd come home like
So and with that being said, like the other things is like I've recently a few different times got to work with the local PD and part of their crisis prevention team with the hopeful, because we're talking about change. Like the whole point is to find some change. One thing that I'm a huge advocate for, and I'm currently fighting for this, is it's a hot take. There's a lot of people in other places that don't agree with this, but crisis prevention officers. That way, it doesn't always have to be a uniformed police officer that shows up to a crisis situation, but have a
training.
Having a trained person who can show up, and like that's your job duty is you're a crisis prevention officer, and your skill set is more geared towards de-escalation. And because again, like you said, sometimes a police officer shows up to a potential suicide attempt, or somebody who's having some like intent to do so, that might be the domino that tips it, because again, that's kind of like cops are a level of and I'm not saying this in a negative context, I'm saying, but cops have like a level of like power and in that context,
it's a different dynamic.
The dynamic of it is just maybe a little scary for that person.
Right.
So instead, having somebody who can show up, and also I think in any line of work, it's always good to have a peer specialist. So somebody who's like, hey, dude, like when I tell you that there's a way out of this, like, and not even out of this, but there's a way to feel like you get your life back. There's a way to get your life back. I tell you that because I've fucking been there. Like I've been, and like, so like, I think that's very important. That was I remember one of the first times a counselor ever really connected with me is when they introduced me to a peer specialist. Is somebody that was like, oh yeah, like 6 years ago, like I had suicide attempts, and I'm like, oh goddamn, and then
so you actually noticed.
Well, and then I stopped feeling so crazy when like I was having like part of the existentialism is I'd have derealization and disassociation. And for anybody who doesn't know, derealization and disassociation, very, very common actually in like people who have severe anxiety and depression. But if you haven't experienced it, your first time experiencing it is absolutely like earth-shattering. It's terrifying.
That's honestly like one of the weirder parts too about like this experience is like it becomes like a coping skill, and you'll almost like snap to every once in a while and be like, oh my god, my mother is dead, like she killed herself, like that really happened. Well,
and I think that that's kind of like the maybe the biological reason that like disassociation and derealization exists is because maybe because it's like reality is too much. So you literally, for people who don't understand, that's the concept of it is you actually detach from reality while being there. So it's as strange as it's as strange as like you're walking through the grocery store one day and out of nowhere you just like get this like very indescribable feeling, and it's almost like you feel like you're in a dream, and like you start looking at people and being like, yo, like, am I even part of this right now? Like, and like everything, and then it's usually anxiety follows it, and once anxiety kicks in, obviously like cortisol and all those things get introduced to the scenario, and that's where panic attacks happen, and then it's just a really uncomfortable feeling. But like the parts where I'm trying to find a healthy balance of being a positive person without being like the cheesy, like everything's, like we talked about, like the almost like the played out, like I try to bring a level of realism to it, because when I say this being serious is I used to have, when I say used to have derealization, that's a lie. I still have it. I still have derealization. But the first time I had it was so horrific. And like Kelly knows this, like we've talked about it, but I was also very suicidal at a point in my life. And in that time, derealization was a big antagonist for that. And now I still have it, and now I've kind of reshaped my mind that I just don't care anymore. Like it sounds weird to put in context, but I'll start getting derealization, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, dude. Like
when you're mentally ill, you learn how to accept it.
And then I will say on the benefit of it, then it just kind of gets softer. It's not as sharp. It dissipates quicker, because I'm just like,
I think
whatever.
it's kind of like chronic pain. I'm used to it. Fuck, this hurts.
Yeah, literally, yeah. It's kind of, that's a good analogy. It's still there. So that's kind of there's so much to say with it, but
two questions for you. First, have you ever felt suicidal? Is that like something that you've ever really like thought about or
considered? I mean, when I was how old was I? I had a suicide attempt actually when I was
learn something
15,
new every day. 12 years,
I think. I can't remember really, because like I don't know, your brain trauma blocks. You know what I'm saying? But I tried to like hang myself when I was in the youth home, and the bar in my closet broke.
I remember you said that.
And so like because I'm a hefty boy, but thankfully,
I was gonna say thank God saved his life, made my life bearable.
Like yeah, man, I've definitely been there. One thing though that I think that gets brushed over a lot is the not necessarily like I'm going to kill myself, but like if a bus hit me while I was crossing the street, like I wouldn't mind.
That is actually.
I wish I would never wake up. Like these are the signs they talk about in the QPR.
That's a really huge thing, because it only takes so long of feeling like that before you actually start to put those gears in motion. You start.
Quick on that note, like the closest thing I ever heard my mother say to like any kind of a sign, other than the time she threatened to die by suicide, which I did. I didn't take her seriously. Is she would say like, "Oh God, I hope I don't come back to this planet next life." And I just figured she was like, man, I'm done with this one. Like, I didn't think of that as a sign,
Yeah. Just like those little things in conversation.
It's really, really important to pay attention to those like early warning signs, because at one point you're like, haha, I'm gonna make a suicide joke, and then all of a sudden, a month down the line, you are like, no, I fucking feel like this.
Yeah.
I fucking do not want to be.
I think it's one of those things too where they desensitize themselves.
Oh no, I think there's a lot of people who, like you said, like there's times it's heavier than others, but like kind of live in this perpetual state of suicidal. Like they're just kind of like always suicidal, and then maybe there's factors in life that might take place that will exacerbate it. And then once that kind of dies back down, they go back to that kind of that steady, almost like
baseline.
That baseline of suicide, but it's always there of just being, and I think even you brought up, Crook, of like, I don't care if like, I don't want to kill myself, but if I got hit by a bus, or like if I got like, in a car wreck, that is suicidal.
Or like the slow suicide of drinking yourself to death.
Yeah, or like, kind of like that, like, if you're self-medicating, knowing that your self-medication is what's killing you, like to me that's a level of suicidal like intent. Like
I know a friend who, has a pretty good problem with alcohol, and his legs were swelling up, and his face would swell up, and he realized that he was just drunk all the time, even at a baseline drunk all the time, and now that is sober, it's like, wow, I was just slowly killing myself. Like, intentionally. You know
like,
what I'm
no,
saying?
yeah, I
Like,
this, they
well,
didn't
I'm
have
too
any-
scared, but like if the consequences of my actions, you know, and I won't laugh.
And they didn't have any intention of stopping.
And the
either.
ironic part is they probably do that vice because they want to escape the suicidal, like
Right.
and the
Yes.
depression.
Yes,
and
yes,
then,
yes.
And then yeah, it becomes this
Snowball
it
effect.
becomes this paradoxical like thing of like, hey, the thing you're escaping with is killing you, and you're using it because you don't want to
On
feel
that
like
note,
it.
fuck Xanax, dude. Fuck
fuck.
Xanax. That shit is evil. Don't get me wrong. Like, if you need it and you
Yeah.
take it
So,
as a prescriptive thing, sure. But
There are therapeutic doses to most things.
Yeah, exactly.
but it literally ruins the pathways in your brain to where like you just start going with whatever is the fucking background, you know, and like the background track to my mother's life was I want to kill myself, and so like, you know, there. Spoiler alert, you know, there's some information in there about how Xanax
Was a
led to
potential,
this.
was a
Yeah.
potential.
And I mean, obviously there was so many factors, but that was a big one, you know.
Xanax
Xanax.
addiction is crazy.
Yeah.
On an unrelated topic, dude, this fucking futon has like no cushion.
It's terrible,
my
isn't it?
Like, bro, my cakes,
ow, my back.
my fucking cakes are screaming right now, dog. Like, my butt cheeks hurt so bad.
There was something. Where'd it go?
Yeah, so we're probably getting pretty fucking lengthy.
So, quickly, like there are these suicide myths, okay? And there's a myth, and I even say it in my music because of old. This is all very old because we don't really have a lot of literature from now because people don't want to talk about it. There's a myth that once someone gets it in their head, there's nothing anybody can do to stop them. And I think that was put out because they wanted to comfort people who had lost people to suicide. But that's just not true. It's not true.
And I think they put that probably in the context of like when somebody's like, I am going to kill myself. It's like,
Well, and that's
there's nothing that you can do. Is what they're
so
trying,
in the
is what they're
yes,
trying to
I
say.
understand that, but also like
No, I
in
know.
the
No,
QPR
I'm on your
training-
side in the context of because, like, a lot of people don't know this, and I mean, I'm comfortable talking about it now. But like, at one point, I totally felt that way. Like, there was a time in my life where I was actually convinced I was going to, and it was like when is enough enough? Like, when do I drown for long enough before I kind of submit to this? And then also the like, well, how would I? Kind of thing. Which I will say, flash forward to now, and that was like 5 years ago. Flash forward to now, like it's not something that even it doesn't cross my mind. Like it's just something that like, I mean, of course, if like there were say like an intrusive thought, but there's no longer ever like even a moment of on my worst day, there's not a moment of like I want to like just not be here anymore for me.
And that's why it's important to also like, if you are suicidal, to just give yourself a little more time, dude. Like, I know that it sounds like just do this, just do that, but like most suicide happens in a snap decision. You know, right?
So you would think that, but the statistics are showing that that's not true. That it is actually like a decision that people sit on and think about for a long time. And I can attest to that as a person who has been suicidal. And the other thing is that we can't put the burden of saving themselves on people who are suicidal, because when they're that deep down dark in their thoughts, like they can't pull themselves out.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important for us to reach out and ask them. And like what they say, like the QPR, which is, it's, if you want more information on that, it's oh crap, look up the QPR Institute. So they say that it's question, persuade, refer. And what they say is it's better to ask the question badly than to not ask it at all.
Yeah,
And don't be afraid to ask your friend who is, you know, saying casually suicidal things, are you thinking about killing yourself? And like try to avoid things like, oh, you're not going to do anything stupid. Or you try to avoid shameful statements. But like they said, it's better to ask badly than to not ask at all. And, you know, do what you can to persuade them to at least stay for right now and refer them to someone who can help them, like 988 or, you know, any of the other resources that you feel comfortable referring them to. Quickly, the Sweetwater County suicide statistics. Oh, wait, not Sweetwater County, Wyoming. Okay. So in 2022, Wyoming's suicide rate per capita, which means suicide deaths per 100,000 citizens, was surpassed in America only by Montana and Alaska with 25.6 per 100,000. At that time, we had 581,381 residents by the Census Bureau, and we lost 149 people. According to the most recent 2024 statistics that I could find, our rates are the highest in the country at 32.3 per 100,000. Our population is now 586,485, and we have 190 deaths. Now, I thought, okay, well, our population rose. Maybe that's it. Our population rose only 8%, and our suicide rate raised by 27%.
That's fucking terrible.
So, yeah, and on that factor, only the countries of Lesotho and Guyana have higher suicide rates per capita than Wyoming when it comes to countries. And there's countries, there's insane amount of countries in the world. I unfortunately have not had the moment to like research what those countries are like, but within the United States, the only other places that even compare to our suicide rates and compare badly are Montana and Alaska. And I looked at that and I said, okay, what do those have in common? They have long winters, low amounts of sun, and work hard, cowboy up mentalities. And that's why it's so important for us to like say, you know what? Talk about your feelings.
Mental Health Day.
And if you say this, mean it, because Suicide Prevention Month has been very hard for me because I reached out, and people didn't want to hear it. If you're going to say this, mean it. I would rather listen to your story than attend your funeral.
As the kids are saying, stand on business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And also, you know, remember that you're not a burden. Your loved ones would not be better off without you. Your absence would be forever felt. And I didn't get to ask one thing also of you.
Yeah, you go ahead.
As a person who has been deeply suicidal, and I know you have because that's how we ended up getting really close.
Yeah, literally. That was right. Like, we were always close, and then that experience, like, fucking, bonded us.
How did you experience, like, if you put yourself in the position of someone who's like, I want to die, I want to kill myself, how did the experience of hearing that album hit you in that perspective?
So that was, so obviously anybody who listens to the album in whatever degree, like if you're suicidal, if you're not, the album, the reason why I think it's so like artfully done is you can, one, not be suicidal or have severe depression, and you can listen to the album like, fuck, that's heavy. You just know. Somebody who's been there, it was cathartic, like you said, because it very much, again, my experience is I didn't lose a parent to suicide, but like when you were doing the grocery store skits, that's the reason I think when I was like, oh fuck, is because I'm like, oh my God, I'm not the only person that shit happens to, you know, because like because that legitimately will happen to me. I will be just going through my everyday life, no matter what I'm doing. I'll be in a very important meeting. I'll be at the gym working out, and like this, on a really bad day, and especially back when it was bad, that just inner intrusive monologue, it was just horrific. It was just awful. And so hearing the album through that scope, cathartic, because there's almost like this weird comfort knowing you're not alone, you know, like I think it's just true. So hearing somebody, like, I think there's going to be a lot of people who suffer, who listen to your album and are going to be like, oh fuck, she gets it. And that's honestly peaceful. That there's like a level of peace that comes with that. Because for the longest time when I was having my experiences, it was such an isolated and dark experience until I would go to talk to somebody about it, and without me prompting it, they would bring something up that I related to, and I'm like, oh, hold up, that happens to you too? And I'm like, oh, dude, all the fucking and honestly, I swear to God, I feel like elated. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. Like, well, so
for me, with us, it was the clouds thing. I was like, oh my God, no way. You too?
And then trippy, I have one of my staff, and a good friend of mine also, but she actually was laughing because my wife, that was a big thing my wife and I would joke about, is the clouds. Because early on, for whatever reason, it's almost like clouds didn't exist until I became existential, and suddenly, like, I was like, what the fuck? Like, because I was like being like, have clouds always look like this? And my wife was like, always, dude. Like, yes. And I don't know why they fascinated me, but then recently she was like, hey, like, to my staff, I won't say her name, she's like, but hey, tell Nick what you were stressed about. She was, dude, the clouds, they're like huge. And I'm like, oh my God, dude. I was like, they are huge, huh? Like, they're way bigger than they've, and she's like, they're bigger than, and like, my wife's like, no, guys. Like, they're not, like, they're clouds. Like, so.
Yeah, but they hold tons and tons of water, okay?
Yeah, so.
Well, and they look crazy.
They really do.
They're fucking so cool now, but like,
that's my thing. So, yeah, but so, for me, and I'll be honest, like, to look at it from that scope, it's still, like, I can't fully have that perspective because I'm not him anymore.
I was wondering, because I was thinking, like, did it make you like think of like the people who you would have left behind?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You
so
absolutely.
Like,
how did that make
part.
You feel?
Yeah.
Like,
so part of my, like the fact that I have been able to like really pull myself out, and like again, you guys know this because you I would say out of the people who know me well are probably gonna for the most part, people who know me very well. Just in the community are just going to be like, oh, Nick's a positive, good guy. For the people who know me on a deep spiritual level, which is like a soul level, are going to realize like that there's a very, 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 very much deeper level to the things that I've been afflicted with. That being said, when I was on my like course to finding some peace and feeling better and pulling myself out of that dark place, the people I would have potentially left behind was a big catalyst for me to change. Like, cause I truly, like, I'm just being honest, like, not to sound cliche, but like my son and my daughter, like I couldn't even imagine them without dad. Like, and you guys see this, not to fucking flex too much here, but I'm a wonderful father, and I have a fucking wonderful connection with my children. They are my best friends in the whole wide world. And like the literal, like today, I swear to God, I was driving today with my wife had me on speaker, and she dropped my son off at jiu-jitsu. And when she was like, all right, like, I'll be back. And like, when you come here, don't come outside till you see my car and stuff. And just him being like, oh, I know, Mom, I heard you. And hearing his voice, I was like, God, I just love him. Like his little fucking voice. So it's stuff like that I couldn't. And mind you, y'all, I thought about this. I thought about my wife distraught, trying to explain to my daughter, Daddy's not here anymore, and what that would do to that little girl. Like, I could never. And like, so, it sounds corny, but I mean, there's so much truth to it. But like, my wife and my kids, like, have saved my life in that regard. Like, I don't know where I would have been if that weren't a contributing factor, but the fact that it was, yeah. So, to answer your question,
like, you know, obviously, like, I don't want to make anybody who's in that much pain feel guilty, but I do have hopes that people who feel that way can see more deeply the pain that they leave behind, and hopefully that might influence their decisions, because a lot of them, I know my mother felt like, you know, we would be better off without her. Like, we would get over it. And that's just not true. That pain lasts forever, and you will be missed.
And another thing, as we kind of conclude here, another thing about your album. Huh?
Another one.
And another one, yeah. That's how our nights end up going. It's like, hey, why is your first podcast episode 9 hours? Well,
We're doing okay. It's less than 2 hours at this point right now.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Damn. So, but one of the things I will conclude on is your album is your perspective.
Yes.
And I will say, even in that regard, your perspective isn't everybody else's perspective.
No, absolutely.
So from my perspective, when you were going through it, it was really easy for me to offer something that didn't add a lot of value to you and make sense to you, but made sense to me. So like when you would like vent to me way before you even wrote this album, it was really new and fresh, and we'd like all be hanging out and having these really big heart to hearts. I like, of course, you'd have these thoughts and feelings like, oh my God, what could I have done differently? And how much of this is my fault? And I have so much guilt. And then from a fair perspective on my end, is like, dog, I know it's easier said than done, but like, you need to let that guilt go. Like you're not in control of that. And regardless of how horrible is it that it happened, you guys, I mean, this is just an honest statement, had a dysfunctional relationship that you couldn't have foreseen that happening. You like, that's not your fault and like, but
had I known, it'd be
exactly.
different. But like the QPR guy said, you can't know what you don't know.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where, from your perspective, I think that's another thing for people listening to kind of check into is you're writing it from your perspective, which is distraught.
Yes. Oh yeah. And that's one
yeah.
thing I was going to say is too, there's a lot of unhealthy mindsets in there because I wasn't trying to like say like, oh, here's the healthy way of thinking about it. I was trying to say, this is what the experience was.
Exactly.
Healthy
like,
or not.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Like this, and that's another point, because again, from an outside perspective,
I'm glad you brought that up. I meant to say that.
From an outside perspective, as a friend and a fan listening to it, and not only that, like as a fan listening to it, and then as a friend listening to you, my perspective can be like, again, and this is that shit that I think. The dialogue can always be different, but I very much try to hold that space of being like the cliche, like, it will get better, Cal. And I was saying with so much sincerity, being like, dude, I swear to God it will. And like, and I remember I almost, because us knowing each other's like personalities, like I know you didn't take it as insensitive, but within the first few weeks of us hanging out and it happening and just seeing your raw pain, like, I mean, that's another thing for somebody who is a supporter of somebody suffering. So seeing that, I remember being like, there's probably like some powerful music somewhere in here. I remember like being like, there's like,
there is.
Yeah. And so like, ironically flash forward now, here we're talking about your album. And so
quick speaking on that, actually, like, the whole, like, you know, like when you're trying to like be helpful and like what you're doing isn't helpful. Like I remember, when our friend lost her person, she withdrew completely from us, and I was hurt by it, and I was like, what did I do? And I realize now that I have this experience that I just couldn't meet her where she was at. There was nothing that I could do to make anything better, and a lot of what I tried to do to make it better made it worse. I remember hugging one of his daughters at his funeral, and I was bawling my eyes out, and I said, you're going to do so many great things in life. And she repelled from me. And now I understand why. Because when you're deep in that pain, you don't want to think about the good things that are coming.
Yeah. Or just don't tell me the shit that like, that
let me
is
be
expected.
in pain right now.
Yeah, exactly. Don't
just stand here with me
and
while I cry.
And that circles back to I'm here. Like, I'm here.
Yes.
Like, I don't know what to say to you, but I'm here. Like,
yes. Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
Well,
and you can
that's
say
what I was
that.
telling
You can
somebody
literally.
else is like, the best thing you can say is, that must be so hard. I'm here for you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Like, don't say I know how you feel. Even if you lost somebody to suicide, you don't know how they feel.
Yeah, I'm here.
Because you lost different people. Yeah. I'm here. That must be so hard. I'm sorry you're going through this. Period.
Yeah. So my final question then, if you guys feel like you've kind of said your things you want to speak on, I do have one final question for you, if you're cool with wrapping up with that. My final question might be a tough one to answer. Do you think this album, in writing it, served its purpose?
So that's actually like a really loaded question, because it was very cathartic making it, and it really did help me process a lot. In the early days of making it, I was still very much in denial. I still would wake up and expect her to walk through the door, and none of it would be real. And I mean, there's still a part of me that wishes that was true, but it's just not. And in helping survivors feel seen, I think that it will be there. Other than the people who are like, wait, my anger is not reflected in this, and to those people I say, yeah, I can only speak on my experience. I can't ever, like you said, we don't have any answers, like definitive answers, so I can't say that it will stop people from wanting to die. I sure hope so. One of my biggest reasons for making it was like, I got it tattooed on my neck, don't tell me how to feel, don't tell me how to heal, because people would say like, oh, you're gonna get past it, oh, it's just a mindset thing, oh, and I wanted people to see that like it's deeper than that. And what I realized was that a lot of the invalidators aren't going to be the people listening, unfortunately.
And usually that's just the chatter, like the people like that, or like the.
And in that sense, I'm afraid it won't.
Or like the move on already people. Be like, oh, dude, move on. Like,
yeah.
Be like, dog, like, for fuck's sakes, like, like.
Well, and that's like, in one of my posts, I said there's been a lot of dismissive energy, and some of it came from a place of like, I see you're in pain, I love you, you being in pain hurts me, I don't want you to be in pain anymore. And there's also the people who are like, get the fuck over it, like everybody goes through shit, and like, let me tell you, and Jesse can attest to this, I know that everyone goes through shit. I've gone through all the shit. And, this is not by far the only hard thing I've ever gone through.
Yeah, so I guess I'll close with, maybe we could all close with this. This is what we actually close on. Because otherwise we'll have another 6 hours of a podcast. I think we should close on, we'll try to make it brief and concise, but just some closing remarks on advice that you give to either the suicidal, the people who are the survivors of the suicide, or the people who are trying to support in general.
So I have a thing, like as a person who is supporting a survivor, you're going to think the thoughts of like, why can't you just go back? Or like, why can't you just get over it? Or why can't you just, and like, we all have those thoughts, dude. But it is important to understand and know that they will never just go back. They will never just get over it. And that they will never just not feel that anguish. And it's important for you to open yourself up to that knowledge. Is to not, because it won't go back. It's not going to go back. And you have to focus on really creating a new relationship, because they're never going to be the person that you want them to be, and that's with anybody really, is that they're, you can't force people into change.
Yes.
And especially not in this situation, because you can only be there and accept people where they're at.
Yep.
And
accept that people are going to consistently change.
Right. And,
and that's without the trauma side of it.
Yes.
Right.
Like even all trauma aside, like the guy that my wife met is nowhere fucking near the guy that I am
right.
now. Yeah. And like same with her, like the woman that I met, that I'm married to today, not even remotely the same as the person that I, met, all those years ago. And that's trauma aside. Like that's just that's human nature. Like, so I think even like you said, Crook, framing yourself in a mind state of like, not only is that person going to change and grow, but like, I want to do that with them.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And grow with them and learn with them. And if you are the person, the support system for a survivor, do the research too. Everything that they're looking at, reading about, learning from, like, you should absolutely at least, try to like understand.
Yeah, and have a love of sincere interest.
Right.
Even if it's as far as you don't read the whole book, like if I saw, like somebody reading it, like, hey, tell me what you read today. Like, tell me, like, what did you take from today that you read? That, like,
learn.
What did you
grow. And be compassionate.
Hell
because they're not, things aren't gonna be the same ever, and that's on business.
And also, I'm gonna use a little bit of my over positive here, and that's okay.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't. You don't have.
And you're not gonna
It's
know.
okay to not be okay.
You're also not going to know how to deal with the situation.
Yeah.
Like no matter what, no matter how much training, even after I have experienced being a support system for a survivor, if this shit happened again, whole new system, whole new situation. I wouldn't know how to deal with it again. And so
Yeah, it's not like a fucking. It's not like an IKEA manual.
There's no rhetoric. You know, there's no book.
Yeah.
I mean, there are books that help, but
The books that really help have the information of like, hey, it's every.
Start to help and then get really. Life will get better. Everything will fucking work out, and then there's a bright side to this. No.
So what's your? Do you want me to go and then you conclude everything? Since
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so I'll go and then I think you conclude and then plug the album.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah.
So what I'll say is I'm gonna do what Callie actually hates a lot, but I do try to. So the way that I healed and part of what I try to offer to people is a level of like very optimistic positivity. But I always really balance that and anchor with that with like realism and like reality. So my positivity, I don't ever try to make it over glorified and like it's all sunshine and rainbows and bunnies and butterflies. I try to like especially with me, like I'll put it this way, and I mean this sincerely. The person who over 5 years ago had my traumatic stressful experience, and like as a byproduct of that went to this like dark place that I never wanted to go, like this place that I never thought I'd be at, having thoughts and feelings that I never wanted to experience. Early on, I was like, oh my God, I just want to go back to normal. That was my baseline. I was like, God, I just want to go back to normal. Well, here's the thing. Guess what, guys? I never did. I never went back to normal. Since my first panic attack, my big level of trauma, like I remember the day that changed my life. Since then, I've never got to go back to be the old guy that I used to be. But I'll tell you, I actually really like the dude I am now. Like I really fuck with who I am now. And so much so, I actually think he's a lot cooler than the dude that I was back then. Like I actually, part of like we joked about the clouds thing, is just scary at first, but now I fucking think clouds are just cool. That's it. That's just it. And like the shit that used
to get in an accident every day.
The shit that used to just freak me out, now I let it fascinate me, and I let it like So when I bring up what I'll conclude on with my like level of positivity is, I don't even want to tell you that it's gonna get like better. I don't want to tell you that it's all sunshine and rainbows. I don't want to give you the cliche like there's value in everything, which there is, but I do want to say that you can bounce back from anything, and that's one thing I've always firmly believed in. And I've actually, on my bad days, I've had that as a mantra in my head. It's like, dog, you can bounce back from anything, because at one point I was convinced that I would never be okay again, and that honestly, I was convinced that I would leave this earth at my own voluntarily at some point because I couldn't take it anymore. Yeah. And now, I couldn't be farther from the truth. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'll kind of end on, is I feel like you can bounce back from anything, and you kind of take your experience and you mold it how you want to. Me personally, I used a lot of my experience, and I mean, your experience, obviously, it's going to affect everybody differently. For instance, you lost your mother to suicide. I lost my father to alcoholism, and that was a very formative process for me. And so I kind of.
We should talk about that sometime on another podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Yeah, I agree. But so just with that being said, I truly think that there's nothing on this earth. For sure, 100% is miraculous as a human being. And as far as we know, there might be nothing in existence as miraculous as a human being. So I just kind of dive into that. I'm just like, all right, man, like I'm a fucking amazing instrument. Like the fact that I exist is a fucking anomaly and a fucking one in an infinite amount of odds. I'm gonna fucking be the main character of my story, and I'm gonna fucking, I'm gonna rock it out. So that's my kind of positivity, like that I offer there. So that's kind of what I'll conclude with.
Okay, so on the note of like you can bounce back from anything, there's a lyric from one of my favorite bands that my mother actually showed me. I wish she would have listened.
Life is poetry.
No need to ever cut or sever what can be untied.
Oof. Oof.
Yeah.
Damn.
And that's to people who are suicidal, I'd say try to live with a curiosity, you know, what may happen tomorrow, like how may things turn out, and like at the same time, don't expect life to be perfect. Don't expect to not suffer, because that's just not realistic. I believe that's one of the things that did my mother in her journals was I'm sure we've all heard of the law of attraction and manifestation by now. She would write over and over and over like an abundant life with all of my needs cared for and no suffering at all. And I love her, and she would even say, you know, with no suffering for any beings. And like, I love that she was so loving and that she wanted that for people, but that is not the earth that we live on. And I believe that part of the reason why she left was because she could not accept the reality. And a lot of life is radical acceptance. And, you know, like, I won't say that I don't still think about killing myself. I definitely do. But I try to, you know, follow it up with like, well, let's just see what happens tomorrow. Well, let's just see if people surprise us, because like people can be really terrible, and that's one of the reasons why it's hard to stay. Yeah, and you know, to people who are supporting the people who have lost someone through suicide, even if you lost someone to suicide, you do not know how they feel. So don't say that. And Jesse said something to me once, because I remember like he was in like the newness of like feeling his emotions and everything, and we can talk about why that is on another podcast if he feels comfortable. And I was in this newness of like, I was just so healed, and now I'm just like so messed up, and like you can't meet me where I'm at. And he realized at one point that he just had to accept that we could be laughing one second and the next second I could be broke down in tears, absolutely dying. And that's just how it is. You know, and to the people who say, just get over it, just this, just that, like, try to put yourself in, you know, read to anyone that we're speaking to right now, read this fucking book. It's so good. She goes through and she collects the experiences of a bunch of survivors. And so she talks about a lot of different perspectives, and it's very relatable. And if you want to understand what it's like, that's the closest you're going to get without living it.
I think it's ironic that you bring up like the go from laughing to crying, because like that's a lot of our hangouts actually.
Yeah, actually,
like,
yeah.
We'll hang out and we'll start talking about stuff, and we'll both tear up and cry, and the next thing we're cackling, fucking belly laughing at the stupidest shit. So
yeah.
So it's almost like a perfect analogy for life. It's
yeah.
like,
oh, absolutely.
literally.
The tragedy in comedy, you know.
literally.
So yeah, be on the lookout if it's not out yet. If it is out, Words, it comes out, what you leave behind, it comes out on September 27th. And, you know, yeah, Suicide Awareness Beyond Suicide Awareness Month. And we will, if you're watching on YouTube, we're going to try to put it on Spotify. So I don't know that you can add links there. But if you're watching on YouTube, we will be linking the link tree.
You can add links, but
oh, nice. Okay, the link tree with the pre-save if it's not out yet. I want to link the QPR Institute. I have a few links that will be at the bottom there.
We'll put it this way: if you're watching this right now, just go check out the bio of this video, and you'll find every link we're talking about.
Absolutely, and also like. We're working on an album together, you know, because we bring out the silliness and the fun and the flex in each other. It will be a lot more lighthearted than this, and definitely more vibey. Be on the lookout for his album. Comes out in October. It's all drama.
It's all drama, baby.
And we don't know when Jesse's is going to be out yet. He's still working on it.
For the beginning of the year, 2025.
Average Cadaver, and it's going to blow your fucking pants off,
But
so don't be
you
jealous.
You already picked the name?
Yeah, Average Cadaver.
Hell yeah, that's a dope name. Yeah,
It's gonna be so good.
I live and
Yeah.
direct just got to hear that. So that's a dope name, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. Well, all right. Well, that'll I guess conclude the first like soft launch of the Classy broadcast.
Shout out Jesse for
Yeah.
being a fucking genius.
Yeah.
Sometimes he can't think
sometimes.
words. Me either.
Yeah. So, if you guys are listening, thank you. This was a heavy first episode and probably like really long too. This is a long listen. I think hopefully that we were in.
Conversation can never be long enough, unfortunately.
Yeah, even as you were going at the end there, I'm like, oh, I could jump in here. And if I don't, part of my mental health journey is not to do that. Like Nick, shut up, bro. Yeah. So, that being said, future episodes will probably be more formatted with like a time frame, and also we're going to be us, so we're going to talk about the heavy shit, the deep shit, but probably a lot of goofy, lighthearted bullshit too. Like so,
probably a lot of dick jokes and
like
dark humor. So
Dick jokes and fart money.
and goblins come garbage.
Trigger warning. Yeah.
So, all right, hey, we appreciate y'all for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
So
Appreciate
again,
you.
September 27th.
Oh, we'll also have a lot of merch soon, so keep a lookout for that.
All right, peace.
I've been holding in the fart for so long.
I have to pee so bad.
I'm keeping that at the end.
Thank you again for joining us for our first episode of Classy Broadcast. Check the information section on this video for links to all of our social media outlets, a link to pre-save What You Leave Behind on Spotify, and a link to the QPR Institute page for more information on what you can do to help prevent suicide. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts or feelings of suicide, remember you can always dial 988. Wyoming has its own dedicated call center, and they are constantly being retrained in new methods. Reach out to your friends who are struggling. Don't be afraid to ask them if they're thinking about dying by suicide. If you are feeling suicidal, don't be afraid to reach out for help. You are loved more than you know, and you will be missed. Please stay. Join us next time for more exciting Classy Broad news. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you next time.